basically learn about the South Pole and other regions of the moon we want to go to, so when we actually send people, we're targeted where we want to go. And there are a couple things here, right here at JSC, that we're doing to enable this. The first is called Commercial Lunar Payload Services, where we are buying a lander service. So we say, hey, here's about the payload we want to fly. This is when we want to fly it. Maybe you have a small company, you bid, I would like to do that. Here's how much I'm going to charge. Then we come out with specific payloads, you bid against those. And so we've already selected 2 companies, one of which is actually based in Houston, that will be flying to the moon, small payloads to the moon. And then you'll see that Volatile's Investigating Polar Exploration Rover, which spells Viper, strangely enough, not by coincidence, spells Viper. Sounds cool, but basically it's a rover that allows us to investigate the materials on the surface of the moon, including water ice. Where is it? What is its consistency? How hard is it going to be able to be used? That rover is actually built here at the Johnson Space Center, and it'll be flown on one of these CLPS lunar payload delivery services. Then we're looking at increasing our cargo size, and then eventually, of course, actually having people back on the surface. So I think I've walked through this. I think I'll go to the next page. So I wanted to show you that some of that is in development. Some of it is really about ready to fly. On the far left is a picture of the Orion capsule and service module. It's actually, in this picture, it's actually in Ohio, because we have our Plumberg Station vacuum chamber test. Thermal vac chamber is one of the most capable, largest in the world, so we shipped Orion up there. Orion just went through its 2 big hot and cold cycles. Everything went great. Now it's doing EMI, electromechanical testing to make sure that the environment we expect to see in space doesn't mess with the electronics more than we expected it will. It's going great. I expect it to be back in Florida in March, and it'll be done, fundamentally done in May. In the middle, and I'm done for the first flight. The middle is the rocket. The rocket SLS, I think you probably know it's the most capable rocket since the Saturn V. You see the 4 engines, you're looking at the back end of it. That rocket now is actually, it's built in Louisiana, it's been shipped to Mississippi. It's actually in the test stand in Mississippi, where we'll actually fire those engines in a test stand before we ship it to Florida. So it's called the green run, which basically means we're gonna run it like it's gonna fly. We're gonna test the envelope. We're gonna make sure the system works. And it's on the flight unit. And then we'll send the flight unit to Florida and it'll be ready to fly. So the rocket is getting very close to being done, and so I expect early next year it'll be in Florida. On the far right is the launch tower. Obviously you need a launch tower to put the rocket up against and get the crew there. That is also in its final stages of being ready. So this first part of the swoosh that is sending the capsule and people to the lunar region is in that stage of development. No more PowerPoint, we're ready to fly. I talked about the gateway. The gateway will help our sustainability on the surface of the moon. You see Orion docks to it. The gateway fundamentally has a power propulsion element on the front end that's basically using solar electric propulsion to keep us and be able to move the orbit around. And it also has a small habitation area at the beginning where Orion can dock, the crew can get in and out, do research and others, and then also it provides a docking port for the lander. So in the long run, we expect the lander and Orion both to be using the gateway, and as you see in the lander, just below that circle is the ascent module, and that's the part where you have all the avionics, where all the crew stuff is, and the goal is to really get to a point where this node, this gateway, allows us to reuse that ascent module. You remember in Apollo, we threw the landers away every time. And you can imagine that ascent module, the lander, is one of the most complicated and expensive elements in this architecture. So being able to reuse that will be really, really important. Next page. So we know that there's a lot of technology still to go, especially in the out years before we go to Mars. We know we're talking about a sustainable power capability, dust mitigation. Of course, dust on the moon is different than Mars, as you know, but still looking at how to keep that the dust from the folks that get on the surface and reduce it to a reasonable amount before the people get in the ascent module, then before they get to the gateway, before they get in Orion. You don't want to be carrying that dust around with you all the time, and that's complicated to do. We're learning a lot about improving that. One of the key ones there in the middle called in situ resource utilization, is again, let's figure out how to use the materials on the surface of the moon. And of course, those materials will be different in Mars, but also just the process of how we gather those materials, how we break them down into the components we need, for example, water, and then use them either for the crew or for propulsion. So that's one of the big things that we'll be looking at the moon. So a lot of things there that we're going to learn on the moon that will feed forward to Mars. So phase 2 is really about sustainability. And this, I would just say, this extends again to, we'll have more habitation on the gateway so we can stay longer in orbit. That means we can have longer missions on the surface of the moon as well. And then increase the reusability of the systems before we head on to Mars. So I think I've talked about that. I did want to mention something, so I wanted to focus on Artemis since that's the big mission to get back to the moon. But a lot of what we're using in our experience with how their bodies change and how we can adapt to that and mitigate those risks because of ISS. So in November, we will have had Americans in space continuously for 20 years. So many of you look a little less than 20 or close to 20. So you might not have been born when there wasn't an American in space, and that's because of the ISS. So many of us, a few of us in this room, of course, were a big part of making the International Space Station happen. What we highlight in this video, in this picture, Christina was up there over 300 days. She also did a phenomenal job, one of those astronauts that just knocks it out of the park. Great attitude and great ability to do the things we needed to do on space station. Of course, she and Jessica actually went outside and upgraded our battery system, and it happened to be the first all-female spacewalk, so that was a great achievement as well. Christina's home, you might have seen the video of her dog greeting her. Very cool. Anyway, she's just there. She and Jessica are phenomenal. So, but it's an example of space station is giving us more experience for what it means to be in space. Early in space flight, we saw, even with the Mercury and Gemini guys, we saw things that would happen to the body. For example, bone loss, right? Because your bones aren't getting loaded, so your body is really incredible machine. It's going, why am I putting calcium in these bones? I don't need it. So they come home and the bones would be weaker. We'd find other issues, right? Same with muscles. So we knew on station we were going to have to work through that. A lot of work in shuttle to learn how to do that. Now on station with the treadmill, and we have they call it ARID, it's basically a Nautilus system in space. We're finding the crew comes back and bone loss is not an issue. In fact, they're very fit. They have some time, so they work out a lot. So we found we're actually mitigating this particular issue pretty much completely. But what we're finding, that as they're staying long, we're finding other issues. You might have seen some issues we've seen with the eyes, with some folds in the retina. We know some of that is caused, we think, by fluid shifts in the body, but there's other things that we think contribute to that. So these are things we need to, and it doesn't happen to everybody, so it happens to some. We think there's a genetic link too. So this is an example of we're seeing things the longer they stay, some things we didn't expect, and so now we've got to figure out how to mitigate those. So you can imagine when you send somebody on a trip to Mars, this would be really bad to find out halfway there. I didn't expect this, and there's no way to mitigate it, because once they go to Mars, you cannot send something to them like you can to station. They're going to take everything with them when they go. So station is critical to our understanding how to live and work in space. I wanted to show you these pictures. On the left, of course, is the Boeing Starliner, the OFT launch that landed. This was our first in America, our first land landing system, which is a great capability. It was a terrific landing, and you can imagine the crew. They love landing on land because you're not moving anymore. You get a lot of in space. Your inner ear, of course, adapts, and when you land, you can be kind of nauseous. So they love this idea of landing on land. The other nice thing is you're more likely to be able to reuse the capsule, right? It doesn't have saltwater impact, the loads are less. So it's a great concept. We'll see. On the right is SpaceX. That was their Demo 1 launch. I expect very soon, this summer, early summer, we will be flying Americans on American spacecraft, and very likely it'll be Demo 2, SpaceX, and Doug and Bob will be heading to space station, I think, in the early summer. So, terrific work. And I think by the end of the year, it's very likely Boeing will also be flying. So we'll have 2 companies, not just one, but 2 companies. And if you've been working at JSC, you know, I love the Russians. They have done such a great job with us and work on space station. They're great partners in space. Be clear, they're great partners in space. But we've been flying Americans on a Soyuz for 9 years. It's hard to believe, 9 years, because of policy changes in the past. So it's going to be great to have Americans flying on these 2 vehicles in this year. Very, very important. And also gets our number up. Right now we're at 6. We start flying these 4 people on these vehicles, we'll be at 7 people on ISS continuously. Trying to make sure what my time is. Is there a timer on here? Oh, that's me. Oh, hang on. Yeah, so this was the most important video in the whole stuff. So I got to shoot this first shot at Johnson. Why did it bounces 4 times? But it counts. The ball's dead, just to give you a clue. If you ever do that, the ball is dead because they don't want it to ricochet off and hit a player. They weren't worried about me, they were worried about a player. So the ball is dead, you gotta know that. That's why it bounced 4 times. Anyway, this was just to show our outreach, so we did some things. There's my deputy, Vanessa Weiss, on the lower right. She also did a first shot in Houston. Hers did not go in, but I just thought I would mention that. Peggy Whitson's, her shot went in, so Peggy and I are, anyway. Upper left is the Day of Remembrance. You know that we have a great history at NASA, but we've also had some pretty significant accidents with Apollo 1, Columbia, and Challenger. And every year in January, we have a Day of Remembrance at JSC. We have a grove of trees that has the names of the astronauts who have passed, and we take time to actually remember them and place roses at their trees. There's still the family members that come out to help be a part of that event. It's a very moving event. And it's important for the team to remember, again, that the astronauts are the ones who risk their lives for us, and it's our duty to make sure that we understand the risks in the missions that we're about to send them on. Then the lower right was the Martin Luther King Day Parade, and we have employee resource groups like the African American employee resource groups, and we were out there at the parade. It was a bit cold that day, but it was an awesome parade. It was great to be a part of that. So that just shows you some of the outreach we do in the local community. So there have been a lot of Rice alumni at NASA. These are the current ones. 6 of them are on staff, and we have 14 astronauts. And we have a few in the audience here. Paul Marshall is there, Mr. Orion. Paul Marshall is here. Wayne Hale is here. Mark Craig. Yes, those guys are all icons at JSC. Did you go to Rice, Chris? No, you're just a famous guy. And you're on a panel. Thank you for being here today. Anyway, great school, great tradition. And then this, of course, this dude went to Rice. Looks familiar. Jim, I just want to say, and this is not just because I'm here, I think Jim is one of the best administrators that I have ever worked for, and I've worked for 6. And Jim has a passion for NASA, and Jim knows that you've got to take that passion and connect with people and connect with our elected officials in order to give us a sustainable space program, and he's one of the best that I've ever worked for. And I'm not just saying this because this is a webcast, and then you might watch it later. We were talking about what would be cool to show to this group, and so one of the things we thought we would do is there's a lot of programs that students can get involved in. So I appreciate Ryan talking about the CubeSat. That's a great one. We also do Micro G Next. where students do experiments, and then we put it in the water. The water allows you to simulate to some degree weightlessness. And so sometimes they've simulated tools to do repairs in space. They design them, the divers go down and test it out, right, and they see how it works. So that's a student involved. The robotics, or lunar robotics, is another example. I put the link there, and they're in the charts. So if you're interested in one of these programs, you can do that. These are not all JSC programs. These are across NASA. NASA Suits, Spacecraft User Interface Technologies is another one. The Big Idea Challenge is another one. Great programs. Of course, I saw your rocket out there, and Yusuf and I were talking about how easy it must be to launch a rocket in the middle of the city of Houston. It must be a piece of cake. You see how big these are, and they have a lot of challenge to make those happen. So I applaud you for doing that. Very interesting. Then, of course, the NASA Human Exploration Rover Challenge is a big one out at Marshall. A lot of fun, too. And then, of course, you can become an intern. You probably know this. The folks in this audience probably are already type A's. Go get them, but you might already know you can be an intern at NASA. That's the link. We have summer folks, and the deadline is coming up, March 8th, and then the fall. So we look forward to seeing some of you out there and helping us do our job. This incredible job we have. And then, if you already have graduated and you have a master's, which is now the new requirement, you have to have a master's, but you can be an astronaut. So we're taking applications. The last time we did this, we had 18,000 people apply. I expect we will have many more this time. It tells you, again, the interest about how excited people are about this. We had a great astronaut graduation event. I don't know if you saw it recently. And maybe if you got a chance to look at it, you got to see what kind of people these are. And I don't just mean they're doing incredible things, right? They make me look like a slacker, all the things that they've accomplished, but they're also really good people and good leaders. And if you see the event, you hear them talk about each other. And anyway, it's great to be working with them. So you have till the end of March. We look forward to getting more and more Rice grads being astronauts. That would be cool. I think Purdue's still number one, but I just thought I would mention that. Yeah. Say again?
Not per capita.
Oh, per capita. Okay, sure. Yeah. I'm sure there's a statistic we could find, but that's good. That's good. Yeah. A&M only has one, as far as I know, so yeah, you can rub it in. And then, of course, these are links to our social media sites, most of which I don't know how to use, and it's better that I stay off of. But the usual areas, and you can learn a lot about what JSC is doing and get really good pictures and status on our hardware and so forth. So I think I was supposed to have time for questions. I can't tell what the timer says. Do you guys know? I don't see a timer on here. But I will take questions now. Except from the Rice graduates, so I won't. Yeah, that's nice. Any questions? Yes, sir. Okay, good. No questions. Yes, sir.
Have you selected the crew for Artemis 2 yet?
Good question. I'll repeat it. Have we selected the crew for Artemis 2? The answer is no. I expect two things are going to happen. One, we have to confirm the launch date for Artemis 2. And some of that relates to when Artemis 1 launches, because Orion actually reuses avionics from Artemis 1, and Kennedy has to do some updating of the mobile launch platform. So once we settle on Artemis 1, we'll know Artemis 2, and then normally about 2 years out, we go select a crew. So we're close, though. We're close. And we as a country, we're blessed, because we've got some great people that are ready to go do this mission. We'll do an awesome job and represent this country. So, relatively soon, I hope. Great question. Yes? Yes.
How much of an impact could the presidential election have on the funding mechanism going forward?
Great question. How much could the presidential election have an impact on NASA's funding and the strategy? So it can be the president, or it could be the House or the Senate. I've seen both changes, and two things. So we are really blessed to live in this country where we have peaceful transitions of government. I think we take that for granted, right? A lot of places in the world that is not the case. And so these transitions are by definition going to happen, especially presidents. 8 years is all you get. So we've lived through a few of those, and some of those I would say were not awesome because the fluctuation was so significant. In fact, I would just be so bold to say that's why we've been flying people on Soyuzes for 9 years, is because we had a big shift where we did not have agreement on the strategy. So it could. I would say, again, back to Jim Bridenstine, who again I think is one of the best. He's done a great job of talking about why this mission is important, and it's bigger than one administration. And he's connected with people across the aisle. They had a great event in California where Nancy Pelosi came and she talked about Artemis and how important it was to her. So if you can think of anything across the aisle these days, and when I go to Congress now, and we have Democrats that are part of these key committees in Oklahoma and Texas, and of course we have Republicans down where we live too that are a part of that, and even in the city of Houston, Democrats. When I talk to them, they all love the mission. They maybe would quibble over NASA's total budget. Should we go up 12%? Should we go, right, the budget's tight. But I like that, where we're talking about that, not yes or no. So I'm encouraged. But as all of you are voters, you all look over 18, so I encourage you to think about that. I know there are big things in this country, but space policy is something to think about. It's a leadership thing for the United States. So what are the candidates saying? I think is worth asking. Yeah, thank you. That's a great question, because I can tell you it's on my mind as a leader of this great team. What we have gone through in the past, we really need to move forward, right? Keep moving out into the solar system. Yeah, thank you. That was a great question. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Just one more question.
Okay, good.
What do you think about the NASA authorization bill that's being discussed in the House as it relates to changes to our approach to the Moon and Mars?
Good. The question was about the NASA Authorization Act bill, which is on the House side, I think is the one you're talking about, and what my impression was. So I'll go back to the fundamental thing is that it is a joint agreement across the aisle. And so when I look at it that way and say they jointly agree we're going back to the moon, they jointly agree we're going to use the fundamental elements that we have in work. There are some subtleties about how we do the lander, some questions on the funding level and on the date. That's like, boy, I can work that, right? We will work together. So I liked it. If I got to write everything myself, if I was a dictator, would I change some things? Sure. But I think in this environment, the fact this is a Republican-Democrat agreement, I thought it was great. I'll take it, right? I'll take it. Okay, good. Thank you. Great questions. Thanks for your time.